Welcome to Smart Solutions. Today we're talking about retro M16A1s and specifically the Harrington and Richardson M16A1 rifle that you see here today. Now, over the past several years, what's old is new again. There's been a very big reoccurrence of people's interest in retro rifles, specifically, the earlier M16A1, M16 variations. Now, going back really early, the first real rifles that we saw came out of Nodak Spud, and he was the first one to ever go ahead and make the original receivers, the M16A1, the M16E1, and so forth. And that was where we first saw them. And of course, those guns were all built off of basically surplus parts or original Colt parts or original U.S. military parts. And then probably the next big step in there was the BRN16E1 that was made by Brownells, and that was all retro line as well. H&R was sort of a special line. H&R is a very, very old company who has held government contracts. They both held commercial contracts as well. H&R was one of two companies, H&R and GM Hydromatic, which got second source contracts for the M16 during the Vietnam War. Now that was a really interesting time because of the fact that Colt was very much a sole source. We'll go back to 1965. General Westmoreland said that he wanted all combat elements in Vietnam to be equipped with the M16A1 rifle. So basically, there's an immediate need to have the M16s, AR-15s, or they were at the time, XM16E1s, to replace the M14s, which were causing our soldiers to be basically outgunned by AK-47s. Basically, what ended up happening was a platoon of VC or NVA armed with AK-47s would overwhelm American unit armed with M14s. The rifle was just not practical any longer, so this was an immediate need. So Colt was awarded the original contracts yet the first time by, and then as more and more became available, the military does not like having sole sources for major military components. And the reason being is if one thing was to happen to that source, in the case of Colt, which usually came down to strikes, where strikes would interrupt the production of new weapons going to the U.S. government, the U.S. government wanted to have a second and third source for the M16 rifle. So we'll skip forward to around 1967. 1967 was when that was to be established. And there was a big problem with Colt having for as far as the rights. Now, unlike most rifles that the U.S. military ever had, they were not owned by the U.S. government. The M16 was developed by Armalite and then sold to Colt, and then Colt owned that rifle and then was selling that to the U.S. government. So the U.S. government did not own the rights to that rifle. So therefore, if there was a national emergency, the Army wouldn't have had the ability to take that technical data package, go to another company and say, we wanted this rifle. We need you to build this for us. So it took some time to get through Colt with that. So what ended up happening was around 1967, there was two contract awards that were awarded, again, GM Hydromatic and H&R. Now, the trick to that whole thing was the price. They wanted to get you around 30% lower than the price of what Colt was to make that viable, the competitive bidding and such. So if you look at the initial costs that were invested in doing a second and third source, you're looking at a production of 200,000 guns at 60,000 rifles at $250 each in the first year. The second year production was $180 per rifle at $150 each. Of course, that price does not include the $8.6 million for 7 magazines and the $4.5 million and the $5.5 royalty to be paid to Colts to establish the second source production. However, what ended up happening was there was QC controls mostly with the GM Hydromatics. H&R wasn't so much it was that, but what ended up happening was it wasn't worth it. Colt was making these rifles for like $123 a piece. So instead of the government paying to have these other companies build this rifle, they reinvested into Colt, and Colt they expanded their production line, and Colt was, in fact, the sole source. After the secondary shipment, which I think was 1971, was the final shipment. So all the H&R rifles had the 2 million serial number range. But these rifles would be seen. In fact, these rifles would be seen in Vietnam. They'd be seen much later. In fact, many of you guys who are Air Force and even some Army, you'd see H&R lower receivers that were modified into M16A2s to M4s and to M16A4s. Those rifles, lower receivers, still existed because obviously the parts were still good. So that leads you to the commercial era. Now, the H&R brand has gone through several iterations over the years. Again, it had its military contracts, and then it had its commercial contracts, single-barreled shotguns and so forth. And so it's multiple owners since the 1960s. Well, then in 2015, Remington bought H&R, and H&R went back to making single-barrel shotguns. But then the big deal was in 2020 when Remington sold this off to Palmetto State Armory. Now, Palmetto State Armory brought back H&R as the rifle end. Now, they also brought back a gentleman from Nodak Spud. Nodak Spud sort of broke off. And Mike Wheatland from Nodak Spud went over to PSA and to H&R and began development of the H&R line. Now, the H&R line has blown up. It has done incredible with a lot of different guns, a lot of different older guns, XM 177s. In fact, they're right now doing M16 A2s as well. I had first met with those guys probably at SHOT Show this year. It was the first chance I had a chance to take a look at them. These guns pretty much came out in 2022 is when you started seeing most of the writers who were reviewing the H&R rifles. Now, the rifle that you see here is their M16A1. Now, everything that you see here is brand new production. We're going to go over a couple of my personal rifles a little bit later on in this video to show you what it looks like if you wanted to make authentic, meaning original components. Now, original components is completely and utterly unrealistic because, first of all, you got to find them, and if you do, the cost of those parts are going to be outrageous. It's just totally impractical. So the rifle that you see here is a completely new production rifle. And I have to say they paid particular attention to every single minute detail, right down to the flurry marks that were on the receivers, the color. Color was another really big deal that came out of this program as well. Nodak Spud was the first one, probably in many, many years since Colt, actually, to be able to bring back this charcoal gray type finish. For some reason, this finish is very difficult to do. There's only a couple anodizing companies that do it, but they were able to do that. So let's take a look at this rifle. Again, they also have an XM16 A1 version of this rifle, which is my personal favorite of all these rifles. But the one that I wanted to take a look at was the iconic M16 A1. Now, starting in the back, we have the stock assembly. This stock, depending upon when it was put out, could be right, could be wrong. For the most part, though, this stock probably will be wrong because this does not have the trap door. After 1968, 69 was when the cleaning kits were developed, and that trapdoor went in there in the back of the M16A1. So that possibly is probably not correct on here. You also see you have the swivel in the back for the M16A1. Looking at the upper receiver, you have the forward assist, teardrop forward assist. You have the original ejection port dust cover, which has it's not the reinforcement that we saw on the A2. Charcoal gray. Again, we have the flaring marks, which is seen on the rear of the receiver, and in the front, which is indicative of that particular rifle. You have an anodized gray slip ring. The handguards that you have on here, this is something where if you look at the original handguards versus the newer handguards, yes, they're different. Why is it? Because the material that the original handguards were made of is completely obsolete now. It's no longer in production. However, the material we see now is better. This is a Zytel type material. This is much better and stronger than the original stuff that we had back, in the original 60s. Now, this is very well made because a lot of the more cheaper reproductions, if you actually were to squeeze the handguard, you could actually squeeze the two pieces together and you can see how they would flex. This one does not do that. So the quality of this handguard is quite well. The barrel also has been reconstructed. Again, the pencil barrels have been around, they've been making them for many, many years, but in this configuration, this has the original 1 in 12-inch twist of the M16A1. You have a manganese phosphate finish. You have a chrome-lined chrome bore and chamber barrel on here, birdcage flash suppressor. This also has the original spring washer on here instead of the current peel washers or crush washers. So that's correct as well. Of course, your bayonet lug. Now we flip it over. Now, if you take a look here, the markings on where the serial number is, this is the exact format that was used for the U.S. government. The only real difference you're going to see is going to be on the side here where you have where it's manufactured. Instead of it being manufactured in Massachusetts, it's made in South Carolina, which is where PSA is. So, again, everything that we have here is exactly. Now, the bolt carrier group you have in here is manganese phosphate, chrome-plated, chrome-lined. So that'd be correct for the M16A1 at that time period as well. So I'm going to take this apart just a little bit so we can take a look at some of the parts on the inside. Now, there's not really that much to see in here because this is basically an M16 type rifle. But what's nice to see on here is the actual quality of the way that they did it. For as far as the machining is concerned, there's no tool marks whatsoever. Now, if I wasn't nitpicking something, I wouldn't be doing my job. The only thing I can really nitpick on here is if you look at the fire control parts, the safety, the magazine release, the bolt catch, and the pins. These are black instead of gray. So they should technically be gray, but again, that is completely, utterly nitpicking. This rifle also is not a safe queen. This is a rifle that's designed for you to actually go out and shoot. At a cost of around $1,200-$1,300, this is not a safe one. It's something you can go out and use. And looking at your bolt carrier, standard M16 style bolt carrier group. Again, manganese phosphate, MPI tested bolt. Anodized gray charging handle. Again, you have the black forward assist, black ejection port cover. Again, that is just nitpicking at its first order. Your rear sight here is also black. So, looking at your barrel, you can see we have our pencil barrel, manganese phosphate, gas tube. You can see we have riveted in place your heat shields, which is sort of similar to that of the original rifle. But again, this is different. The way the heat shields, the way the polymer is on here, it's different from the original handguard. But it's functional, and it looks like it's supposed to. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take this to the range. We're going to see how it shoots.
You're good.
So we didn't shoot any paper targets with this, since this is iron sights and my eyesight's not that great. So we shot at steel, 800 yards. We shot at our challenge targets, which again, these things are much better than shooting at paper anyways. You get that immediate reaction. Shot about 600 rounds out of this. The ammunition was Federated Ordnance 55 grain full metal jacket ball. Not a single malfunction. Worked beautiful. No problems with this rifle whatsoever. Again, for someone who's looking for a true retro rifle, you got it right here. Again, for a price of around $1,200 to $1,300. Again, that's MSRP. You can probably find them less than that. You know, the other thing that's sort of nice about this setup here is you can buy just the receivers. If say you want to build a retro rifle of your own, you'd be able to buy the lower receivers. So again, this is new production. We're going to go over a couple other rifles here as well. This is for the purist who wants to get the exact type of rifle that they want. They want an exact duplicate of the rifle. These are two of the rifles that I have built myself over the years. I wouldn't even want to really venture think what the cost of this would be due to the fact that these parts are just not available. These are parts that I've had laying around for maybe 20 years that I finally put together about 6-7 years ago. Basically, what I started off here with was a 80% lower receiver and had it marked with the Colt M16 A1. This was not the U.S. government mark. This was just a commercial mark. And then I had sent these over to Victor over at U.S. Anodizing. I wanted the upper receiver, lower receiver, charging handle, and these, I believe he did the Delta ring as well. Had all these parts the proper color of the M16A1. Then I went into my parts bin. I found an original M16A1 buttstock. I found an original M16A1 pistol grip. Original 1968-70 version Colt bolt carrier group. All these small parts came out of an original rifle. The barrel is an actual Colt marked CMP chrome bore, which would probably be around early 80s, mid 80s. This is when it was made. Original handguards, original gas tube. Every part on here was original. So this would be something that would be more of a, this would be a safe queen, because again, these parts you're not able to replace. The fire control group and everything on here was original. I sent these out to have them finished with the original gray finish, so they would all match like they're supposed to. Again, this isn't utterly a complete safe queen, but for somebody who really enjoys the M16A1s, this is one that I had built. Now, the second one was a rifle that I had built. There was sort of a story behind it. Now, this rifle here is another one that I had built, that I'd built myself many years ago. This rifle started off as a Pac West Arms, which was the old Nassard back in the late 80s. It was a jet black lower receiver. PWA was made by Carl Lewis Machine and Tool before he made complete rifles. He just made parts. The upper receiver was just a U.S. government contract marked PM. The barrel was a U.S. government product overrun barrel. Most of the parts were not mil spec at all. They were just whatever you could get. And I had shot the hell out of this rifle when I was in high school. My first year, when I was in the military. I had used this for some of the training that I had done as well, and I had destroyed it. I had marks all over it from pushing up barbed wire. I literally destroyed it. After I got out of the military, I was in college. I decided I wanted to revitalize this rifle. Stripped the thing all down to its bare components, sent the upper lower receiver charging handle to Light Metals, which at that time was doing Colts finishing. And they had done this beautiful finish for me, so then I went out looking for parts again. Brand new CMPB marked barrel, original Colt M16A1 handguards, original Colt boat carrier group, original A1 era stock, and basically this entire rifle was rebuilt. So with the exception of the lower receiver being PWA, everything else, with the exception of the fire control group, is all original M16A1. And nice thing about this one is I also have another upper receiver for it too, which is an original M16 minus the forward assist. That one came from an Air Force base that was getting ready to destroy parts. So I have an original M16 upper receiver for this, and I have the A1. Another one that, again, if you were to try to build today, the ability to find these parts would be almost nil. So showing you just a couple other versions of what an M16A1 clone would look like. Now, again, myself as a historian, M16A1s are my favorite. The original XM16E1s, M16A1s. This is the rifle that it was supposed to be, a lightweight, under 7-pound combat rifle. So if we look at what we've evolved to the M16A4, where you're looking at over 10 plus pounds with all the stuff that you're putting on it. This is really going back to the basics, and maybe that's something that has to be said about why people are looking to go back to these retro guns. Again, getting back to what the assault rifle was supposed to be, a lightweight rifle, and again, space aged, looking it back to its time, aircraft aluminum polymer. This was really groundbreaking back in that time, and looking back 60 years now, it still is. But those of you who are looking for a really good retro M16A1, you will not beat anything out there other than the H&R rifle. Now, unfortunately, Brownells, you don't see the BRN 16A1s any longer. They had made them for a short period of time. I think Brownell's standpoint is you have to look at the amount of quantity that they're going to build, and if it's going to be worthwhile. And I think that's what happened with their BRN 601 and their BRN 10. It was just not enough of them were built, so they were discontinued, but they still do sell some parts. H&R, they're specifically in business to build these retro rifles, and they're killing it. So if you're looking for a good retro rifle of any sort, go check out their website. You can pretty much see multiple different kinds of finishes, multiple different models. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please click like, please subscribe, even better share.